The entire gym froze the moment Victor's hand shot out and clamped around Maya Seagal's neck. It wasn't a tight choke, not enough to injure but enough to shock every single person who witnessed it. Enough to cross a line no one ever imagined someone would dare cross. For a second, the world felt silent. The clanking weight stopped. The treadmills hummed without footsteps. People turned their heads one by one, unsure if what they were seeing was real. Maya Seagal, known in the gym for her kindness, her calm attitude, her quiet dedication to training, stood perfectly still. Not terrified, not screaming, just stunned that someone would react with that level of disrespect over something so small. Moments earlier, she had lightly bumped Victor's dumbbells while walking past. She apologized softly. She even smiled, trying to keep things peaceful. But Victor wasn't the kind of man who let peace exist. He had a reputation, a loud one, a man whose pride was bigger than his muscles, a man who believed strength meant control, a man who thought fear was the same as respect. And now his hand was around the neck of Steven Seagal's wife, though he had no idea who she really was. Gasps spread through the gym like a wave. A trainer stepped forward but stopped halfway, unsure if intervening would make things worse. A young woman whispered, "Is he crazy?" Someone else muttered, "Does he even know who her husband is?" But Victor didn't care. Or worse, he didn't know. Next time, he growled at Maya, "Watch where you're going." His voice was low, but dripping with arrogance. Maya stared back at him, not with fear, but with disbelief. She had trained with martial artists all her life. She had been around calm warriors, disciplined fighters, respectful athletes. Victor was the exact opposite of everything she respected. And then, the front door of the gym opened. A tall, quiet figure stepped inside. A man wearing simple workout clothes, carrying a water bottle, walking the same way he always did. Calm, centered, unshakable. Steven Seagal. He scanned the room for a fraction of a second. He saw Maya. He saw Victor's hand. And the calmness in the gym shifted into something deeper. Something sharp, silent, and powerful. Because nobody in that gym had any idea what Steven Seagal was about to do next. But every single person would remember it forever. The moment Steven Seagal stepped into the gym, the energy in the room changed. Not because he walked in loudly, not because he said anything, not because he looked intimidating, but because true presence doesn't shout, it whispers. And Steven Seagal had the kind of presence that even silence respected. He didn't rush. He didn't run. He didn't explode in anger. He simply took a slow breath, his eyes following the path of every stunned spectator until they reached Maya, and the man whose hand was still wrapped around her neck. What Victor saw when he turned around wasn't a furious husband. It wasn't a man blinded by rage. It was something far more unsettling. A man who was calm, too calm. A man who processed danger with the discipline of someone who had lived his entire life mastering control. But before Steven reached them, let's rewind a few minutes. Back to how this entire situation even began. The gym atmosphere before the incident. Iron Keep Fitness Center was known for two things: good equipment and bad egos. It had regulars who came for honest training, teachers, office workers, athletes, mothers, elderly fitness lovers. Then it had the other type, the show-offs, the loud grunters, the ones who believed the gym was their personal kingdom. Victor was the loudest king of them all. Standing 6 feet tall with arms thick as tree trunks, he carried himself like someone who believed the world should move out of his way. People avoided him not because he was strong, but because strength combined with arrogance becomes a weapon. But Maya? She wasn't afraid of people like Victor. She had been around disciplined fighters and spiritual warriors her entire life. She knew real strength was quiet, humble, controlled. That afternoon, she had been working on her kettlebell routine with soft music in her headphones. After finishing her reps, she walked toward the dumbbell rack to return a lighter weight. That's when her shoulder accidentally brushed Victor's setup, barely a tap. She instantly removed her headphones and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there." Anyone else would have nodded and moved on. Not Victor. He turned his head slowly, like someone deeply offended by something that barely happened. "What did you say?" His tone carried an unnecessary challenge. Maya repeated herself, still polite. "I said I'm sorry. It was accidental." "You think apology fixes everything?" Victor barked. A couple of people glanced over. It wasn't the first time Victor had started drama over something small. Maya didn't escalate. She held her hands up gently. "I didn't mean to disturb you. You can continue." Instead of accepting her words, Victor took a step closer, invading her personal space. You bumped into my weights. You could have hurt me. Maya blinked. Hurt you with my shoulder? Her tone wasn't mocking, just confused, but Victor's pride translated confusion as disrespect. He exhaled sharply, nostrils flaring, trying to show dominance. From tension to trouble, a trainer approached, sensing things might get heated. Hey Victor, everything okay? Victor raised a hand without looking. Stay out of it. The trainer hesitated, then stepped back, not wanting to trigger the confrontation further. Maya, still calm, said, Look, if you need space, I'll move over. This doesn't need to turn into something ugly. But Victor wasn't listening. He wasn't thinking. He was reacting. And reacting from ego is the fastest way to make the worst decision. He grabbed Maya by the neck. Not violently, more like someone trying to intimidate, to prove superiority. But even that was enough to cross every line imaginable. Gasps, whispers, confusion passed through the gym. Someone said, Bro, let her go, that's not cool. Victor tightened his grip slightly, even though Maya wasn't resisting. Maybe next time you'll watch where you're going. A middle-aged woman nearby clenched her fists. That's Steven Seagal's wife. He has no clue. But Victor clearly didn't. Steven arrives. The door swung open, and Steven walked in like he always did, no boasting, no noise, no attention-seeking posture. A few regulars nodded respectfully. He nodded back. Then he looked up. The water bottle in his hand paused mid-step. He didn't need anyone to explain anything. He didn't need context. He didn't need to hear what happened. All he needed to see was Maya's posture. Not in danger, but disrespected. Not harmed, but handled by someone who had no right to touch her. Steven's jaw tensed the slightest bit, barely noticeable. But to those who knew him, it was enough to signal that something had shifted. He placed his bottle gently on the nearest bench. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just deliberate, as if every movement was measured. Then he walked toward Maya and Victor. Slow. Steady. His eyes fixed, his expression unreadable. Spectators stepped aside instinctively, their bodies making a path without being asked. No one breathed. Victor finally noticed the silence behind him and looked over his shoulder. Steven Seagal was standing 3 feet away. Calm. Still. Unmoving. A storm wrapped in silence. And Victor, for the first time that day, felt something he rarely experienced. Uncertainty. Victor had been in fights before. He had yelled at strangers, shoved beginners out of his way, and flexed his strength in front of mirrors more times than anyone could count. But never had he faced a man who stood as still and calm as Steven Seagal did in that moment. Steven didn't rush toward him. He didn't shout. He didn't puff his chest out like most gym bullies did when they were angry. He simply stood there, his eyes locked on Victor, his expression unreadable. If calmness had a temperature, this one was freezing. Let go of her, Steven said softly. The words were quiet. Too quiet. Quiet enough that the entire gym had to lean in to hear them. Yet somehow, that quietness carried more weight than all the yelling Victor had done earlier. Victor scoffed, trying to mask the sudden tremble in his stomach. Oh, so you're her husband? He said, tightening his grip just slightly out of defiance. You think I'm scared of you? A couple of people gasped. Everyone knew Victor had just stepped into the deepest trouble of his life. Steven didn't answer that question. He simply tilted his head slightly, the way a teacher might when a student is making a mistake so obvious it doesn't even need a response. Let go, Steven repeated. Maya spoke before Victor could. Steven, it's okay. I'm fine. Steven's eyes flicked to her for half a second. He didn't show worry. He didn't show panic. He simply acknowledged her words and then returned his gaze to Victor. As if to say, she may be fine, but you are not. Victor attempted a laugh. It came out shaky. What are you going to do? Huh? You think you can intimidate me with your Hollywood attitude? Nobody spoke, because everyone knew something Victor clearly didn't. Steven Seagal wasn't intimidating anyone. He didn't need to. He just existed, and intimidation followed on its own. The trainer who had backed away earlier now stepped forward again, more desperate this time. Victor, seriously, man. Let her go. This is not a joke. Victor barked, back off. He still hadn't released Maya. And that was the moment everything shifted. Steven took one slow step forward. Just one. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just a step. Victor's muscles tensed involuntarily. "What?" Victor snapped. "You want to fight or something? Think you still got it?" Stephen's voice didn't rise. "Release her hand. Now." Victor shook his head, smirking in an attempt to hide his discomfort. "You know, you used to be someone. Now you just walk around pretending." Stephen took a second step. Victor's voice cracked mid-sentence. The gym felt colder, as if the temperature dropped with every inch Stephen moved. No one dared to interrupt. No one dared to breathe. Finally, Maya touched Victor's wrist lightly, not to fight him, just to remind him that she was still there. "Please," she said softly. "Just let go." But Victor didn't, and the reason was simple. He wasn't in control anymore. His pride was, and pride never lets go when it needs to. He lifted his chin arrogantly. "Make me." The gym collectively exhaled in disbelief. Stephen's eyes changed, not dramatically, not suddenly, but with a subtle shift, like a door opening to reveal something deeper behind it. He took the final step, now standing directly in front of Victor, close enough that Victor could feel the warmth of his breath, close enough to see the absolute stillness in Stephen's face. Maya whispered, "Stephen." But Stephen wasn't looking at her anymore. He was studying Victor's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the angle of his wrist, the imbalance in his stance, the arrogance in his grip. Stephen didn't raise his hands. He didn't adopt a fighting pose. In fact, his arms stayed relaxed at his sides. He simply asked, one last time, "Let go of her." Victor swallowed. Everyone saw it. A tiny movement, but impossible to hide. His grip loosened just slightly, as if for a brief moment, he considered compliance. But then someone in the back whispered, "He's scared." And Victor heard it. His pride flared like a match. He straightened up, puffed his chest, and said the words that sealed his fate. "I don't take orders from washed-up action stars." Maya gasped. Someone dropped a dumbbell. The trainer whispered, "Oh no." Stephen didn't react outwardly. His face remained calm, controlled, neutral. He didn't threaten. He didn't warn. Instead, he simply shifted his weight. A tiny movement, almost invisible to anyone who didn't understand martial arts. But Victor felt it. His body sensed danger before his mind did. "What? You gonna attack me?" Victor said, voice shaking despite his attempt at mocking confidence. Stephen finally blinked. Once, slowly. And for the first time, Victor realized he wasn't standing in front of an actor. He wasn't facing a celebrity. He wasn't confronting a man who needed to prove anything. He was standing inches away from a lifelong martial artist, a man who had solved real conflicts long before cameras ever pointed at him. And the conflict was no longer about bumping into weights. It was about respect. And Victor had run out of it. He still hadn't let go of Maya. Stephen took a breath, and the entire gym braced for what was coming next. The moment that none of them would ever forget. For a moment, the gym felt as if the world had paused. No music, no footsteps, not even the air dared to move. Victor's grip stayed locked around Maya's neck, not crushing, but still wrong, still disrespectful, still crossing every boundary a human should never cross. And Steven Seagal stood inches away from him, silent as stone. But silence can be louder than shouting. And Steven's silence was deafening. A young man holding a protein shake whispered to his friend, "Bro, this is about to get bad, really bad." The friend swallowed hard. For who? Everyone knew the answer. Except Victor. Victor looked around, noticing the eyes on him. Dozens of them. Some filled with shock, others with worry, many with anticipation. A few had phones out, recording carefully without getting too close. Victor's ego sparked again. Attention was something he loved. He mistook fear for admiration far too often. He smirked, glaring at Stephen. "What? You gonna hit me in front of all these people?" Stephen's expression didn't change, not even a flicker. His voice dropped to a level so controlled it sent a shiver through the room. "You are grabbing my wife. That ends now." Victor rolled his eyes dramatically. "Oh, please." She bumped into me. "I'm teaching her a lesson." Maya's brows furrowed not in fear, but disappointment. "Victor, just stop," she said softly. "This isn't who you want to be." But Victor didn't hear her. Or maybe he couldn't, because pride is the loudest voice in the mind of a man who's losing control. The trainer, the same one who tried to intervene earlier, stepped forward again, more desperate this time. "Victor, Let her go, Victor snapped. I told you to stay out of it. The trainer froze, torn between doing what was right and what was safe. Stephen shifted his foot slightly, just a few inches, but that single step made everyone watching lean back instinctively as if something powerful had just moved, something ancient, something disciplined. A woman near the ellipticals whispered, "Why is he so calm? How can someone be that calm?" Her friend shook her head, unable to look away. That's the scary part. Calm people don't react. They respond. Victor saw the fear in others and mistook it as fear of him. He puffed his chest, trying to look even bigger. You people should mind your business. This is between me, Stephen interrupted. Not loudly, not forcefully. He simply spoke over him because his presence carried more weight than Victor's words ever could. Victor, he said slowly, I won't ask again. Those 5 words were more final than any threat. Victor's jaw tightened. He didn't want to back down. Not with everyone watching. Not with phones recording. Not in front of Steven Seagal. So he doubled down on the worst mistake of his life. Oh yeah? Victor said. What if I don't? The room tensed. Even those who had never met Stephen felt something shift. A pressure in the air, like a storm building. Maya, still calm despite being held, gently placed her free hand on Victor's forearm. Let go. Please. You're making this worse for yourself. Victor's grip loosened for a fraction of a second. For a moment, it looked like reason might finally win. But then someone a few feet away muttered under their breath. He's done for. Victor heard that. His ego flared instantly. He retightened his grip, not hurting, but reasserting dominance. And that was the final line crossed. Stephen's posture changed in a way only trained eyes could detect. His shoulders relaxed even further. His breathing slowed. His gaze sharpened not with rage, but with clarity. A man who has spent his life controlling conflict doesn't need anger to act. He just needs a moment. And this was that moment. Every spectator felt it. The energy in the gym shifted from tense to anticipatory, like the moment before lightning touches the ground. A man standing near the bench press whispered, I've seen Stephen train before. When he gets that posture, it's over. Someone else whispered, he's not even angry. That's the scary part. Stephen raised his hand slightly, almost imperceptibly. Not to strike, not to intimidate, just enough to shift the balance of the situation. Victor reacted immediately, stepping back, raising his voice, trying to make himself bigger. Oh, so you think you're going to do something? You think your movie tricks work in real life? Stephen didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said, You've had your chances. A gym staff member quietly locked the front door. Not out of fear, but because she knew no one should walk in on what was about to unfold. Victor's grip slipped again. Whether from nervousness or sweat, no one could tell. But Maya used that tiny moment to slide her neck slightly, easing the pressure. Not escaping, just preparing the moment Stephen would need. Victor noticed and tightened again, glaring at her. Don't move. Stephen's eyes lowered to Victor's hand. There was no anger, just finality. The conflict had reached its peak, and the next second, the entire gym would see something they would talk about for years. Because Steven Seagal was finally done waiting, Victor had no idea he was standing at the edge of a moment that would define him for the rest of his life. 1 inch in the wrong direction. 1 second too slow. 1 arrogant word too many. And Steven Seagal no longer needed to speak. He simply moved. It was so subtle, so fast, yet so controlled that half the gym didn't even understand what happened until it was already over. Steven stepped forward with the smoothness of someone who didn't waste motion. He lifted his hand not in a fist, not in anger, but in precision, and placed 2 fingers lightly on the inside of Victor's wrist. Just 2 fingers. Victor frowned, confused by the gentleness of the touch. He expected force. He expected a punch, a shove, a strike, something loud, something dramatic. But Stephen didn't need drama. He needed control. And he had it. In less than a blink, his 2 fingers rotated Victor's wrist outward in a small, circular motion that barely looked like anything at all. Barely noticeable, but devastatingly effective. Victor's hand released Maya instantly. Not because he chose to, but because his body gave up its ability to hold on. His knees buckled without warning. His balance collapsed as if the ground pulled him downward. His breath caught in his chest. The entire gym gasped in unison. What just happened? Did he even touch him? That was so fast, did he flip him? No, he just moved his wrist. Maya stepped back, free, exhaling shakily, not from fear, but from relief. She knew that technique. She'd seen Stephen teach it to law enforcement officers, security professionals, even military personnel. It wasn't an attack. It was a control technique, one designed to break aggression without breaking the aggressor. Stephen didn't follow up with punches or kicks. He didn't advance toward Victor. He simply allowed the man to kneel on one knee, stunned, confused, and disarmed. Victor looked up, eyes wide, breath short. What did you do?" he rasped. Stephen didn't answer immediately. He waited for Victor to stabilize himself, waited for the shaking in his arm to settle, waited for the moment ego loosened its grip. Then he said quietly, "You grabbed a woman to feel strong. That is not strength." Victor stared, swallowing hard. The humiliation wasn't in being forced to kneel. It was in the fact that Stephen didn't even look like he had exerted effort. Stephen continued, "Strength isn't loud. Strength doesn't scream. Strength doesn't hurt the innocent. Real strength protects." The words hit Victor harder than any punch could have. Every person recording lowered their phone slightly. No one wanted to break the moment. Even the air seemed to pause to listen. Stephen extended a single hand, not threatening, not aggressive, but offering Victor a choice. Not to fight, but to stand up with dignity, if he chose to. Victor stared at the hand. He wanted to refuse it. His pride told him to slap it away, to stand on his own, to claim the moment. But his pride had gotten him into this mess. His pride had made him grab Maya. His pride had made him ignore every warning. His pride had made him challenge a man he had no business challenging. And now, his pride was quiet. For the first time all day, slowly, Victor reached up and took Stephen's hand. Stephen lifted him effortlessly, guiding him back to his feet with surprising gentleness. Victor stood there, breathing unevenly, not able to look Stephen in the eye. Maya stepped forward, not with anger, not with hatred, but with calm firmness. "You had a choice," she said softly. "You could have just accepted my apology. You could have walked away. You didn't have to do this." Victor's face flushed with shame. I don't know what came over me," he muttered. Stephen looked at him finally, directly, his gaze steady but not cruel. "It wasn't something that came over you," Stephen said. "It's something that was already inside you. Ego, anger, pride. You let them talk for you." Victor flinched at the truth. Stephen stepped back slightly, giving him space. "This isn't about fighting you," he said. "It's about stopping you, so you don't hurt someone who can't defend themselves." A woman near the treadmills wiped tears from her eyes. "Why is this so emotional?" she whispered. Her friend replied, "Because he could have destroyed him, but he didn't. He just taught him." The gym owner finally pushed through the crowd, pale with panic. "Mr. Seagal, I'm so sorry if we had known." Stephen raised a hand politely. "This isn't about me. Handle your gym. Handle your people." The owner nodded quickly, then turned toward Victor with a stern expression. But before he could speak, Stephen said something that froze everyone. "He doesn't need punishment right now." He paused. "He needs reflection." Victor blinked, stunned. He expected anger. He expected consequences. He expected public humiliation. But Stephen gave him something far more powerful. A chance. A chance to understand himself. A chance to be better. A chance to respect strength, not abuse it. Victor lowered his head. I'm sorry," he whispered, barely audible. Not to Stephen. Not to the crowd. To Maya. She nodded respectfully. "Thank you." Stephen placed his hand on Maya's shoulder, guiding her gently away from the scene. And as they walked toward the doors, the entire gym remained silent, not out of fear, but out of awe. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't a fight. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't dominance. It was mastery, control, wisdom, and a lesson Victor would never forget. Victor didn't leave the gym immediately. He stood frozen near the mats long after Stephen and Maya walked out. For the first time in years, his body felt light but his chest felt heavy, as if a weight he had ignored for a decade had suddenly landed on him all at once. The crowd slowly dissolved, whispers drifting around him like echoes he couldn't escape. He didn't even hit him. "Bro," he made him drop with 2 fingers. Imagine being that wrong and being humbled that fast. He's lucky Seagal didn't break his arm. Victor heard every word. Each one slid under his skin, not as an insult, but as a reminder of who he had been just minutes ago, and who he had the chance to become now. The gym owner approaches. The gym owner, Khalid, approached him cautiously. He wasn't angry, just disappointed, which somehow felt worse. "Victor, I've known you 10 years, Khalid said quietly. "You've always been strong, hardworking, focused. But today?" He shook his head. "This wasn't you." Victor swallowed hard. "I don't know what came over me." Khalid's eyes softened. "It wasn't something that came over you. It was something already sitting inside you." The same words Stephen had said. Victor exhaled. "I messed up bad." "Yes," Khalid said, without hesitation. "But mistakes don't define you. What you do after them does." Victor nodded, but shame still weighed on him. Khalid placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go home. Think. Don't train today. And tomorrow, we talk." Victor nodded again and finally walked toward the exit. Not proud. Not angry. Not defeated. Just quiet. The long walk home. The sun was setting when Victor stepped outside. He didn't put on his earbuds. He didn't scroll his phone. He just walked. Every replay of the incident stung. Not the moment Stephen made him drop. That part didn't hurt. What hurt was the moment he grabbed Maya. The fear in her eyes. The shock. The disrespect. He had never seen himself as that guy. But today, he had been exactly that. By the time he reached his apartment, one truth settled in his chest. Strength without control is just violence. And he had crossed that line. Maya's perspective. Meanwhile, inside their car, Maya sat quietly as Stephen drove. She wasn't shaken anymore. Just thoughtful. "Do you think he'll learn from this?" she asked finally. Stephen didn't answer immediately. He never rushed conclusions. "That depends on the man," Stephen said softly. "If his ego is louder than the lesson, then no." Maya looked out the window. "But you gave him a chance." "Everyone deserves one," Stephen replied. "Some people never had anyone teach them differently. Sometimes they need a moment like today." Maya nodded. She knew he was right. That was the difference between Stephen and most people. He didn't enjoy humbling others. He helped them grow even while stopping them. She reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for being there." Stephen gave her a small, quiet smile. "I always will be." Next morning, the unexpected knock. At 7 a.m., Khalid heard a knock on the gym office door. He assumed it was one of the morning trainers. But when he opened it, Victor stood there, hair wet from the shower, uniform clean, posture straight. But this wasn't the usual confident posture. It was controlled, respectful. "I'm here to talk," Victor said. Khalid stepped aside and let him in. Victor sat down, took a deep breath, and said, "I want to apologize, to you, to Maya, and to the gym." Khalid didn't speak, he let him continue. "I don't know why I snapped. I guess I've been letting anger pile up, work stress, personal stuff, competition losses, everything. And yesterday it all exploded on someone who didn't deserve it." Khalid nodded slowly. "That's honest." Victor's voice dropped. "Seeing her scared, that got to me more than anything. And the way Stephen humbled me, it wasn't humiliating. It was necessary." Khalid's expression softened. "So what do you want to do now?" Victor looked up, resolve clear in his eyes. "I want to change, for real." An unexpected request. Victor hesitated before adding, "And if Maya and Stephen ever come back, I want to apologize in person, properly." Khalid smiled, a small but genuine smile. "That's a good start." Then he said something Victor did not expect. "You know, Stephen teaches a lot of self-defense for discipline, not just technique." Victor blinked. "You think he'd teach me?" "That depends," Khalid said. "Are you ready to listen this time?" Victor nodded without hesitation. "Yes." The call. Later that afternoon, Khalid stepped outside and dialed a number. Stephen picked up on the second ring. "Khalid," he said calmly. "I assume this is about yesterday." "Yes," Khalid replied. "And it's good news." Stephen waited. "Victor wants to apologize," Khalid said. "And he wants to learn. Not to fight. To grow." There was a long pause. Then Stephen sighed lightly, but it was the kind of sigh that carried understanding, not frustration. "All right," Stephen said. "We'll come by tomorrow." Khalid's face lit up. "Thank you." The real transformation begins. When Khalid hung up, he looked across the gym. Victor was sweeping the mats. Not because anyone told him to, but because the gym was his second home, and he wanted to fix what he had broken inside himself. Not through strength, not through dominance, but through responsibility. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning of Victor's transformation. And tomorrow, he would face the man who humbled him. Not to fight him, but to thank him. The next morning, the gym was quieter than usual. Not because it was early, but because everyone knew Steven Seagal was coming back. Some waited with curiosity. Some waited with guilt for laughing the day before. Some waited simply to witness what transformation looked like in real life. And then, the door opened. Steven and Maya stepped in side by side. No anger, no tension, just calm. Victor was already waiting near the mats. His hands weren't clenched today. His shoulders weren't puffed. His gaze wasn't defiant. He looked humble. When he saw them, he took a slow, steady breath and walked forward. Maya, Steven, I want to say something. The gym fell silent, all eyes on him. Victor's voice cracked slightly, just enough to show sincerity. I'm sorry, truly. What I did was wrong. I let my anger control me. I disrespected you, Maya, and I could have hurt you. I know you didn't deserve that. And Steven, thank you for stopping me without breaking me. Maya stepped forward first. Thank you for apologizing, she said softly. You owning your mistake means more than you think. Then Victor turned to Steven. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to earn back my respect. Not just yours, everyone's. Steven studied him quietly. The gym held its breath. Finally, Steven spoke. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, he said. It's something you give, and I already gave it yesterday. Victor blinked, surprised. But what you can earn, Steven continued, is control over yourself. That's where real strength comes from. Victor nodded deeply. I want to learn that. Steven placed a hand on his shoulder. Not as a warning, not as dominance, but as guidance. Then we start today. The first lesson. Steven led Victor to the center of the mat. The gym formed a circle around them, silent, respectful. Steven didn't teach him punches. He didn't teach him throws. He didn't teach him locks. He taught him breathing, control, presence, awareness. Strength is a storm, Steven said. But discipline, that is the hand that calms it. Victor followed, breath by breath, slowly grounding himself. For the first time in years, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply learning. After a while, Steven stepped back. That's enough for today. Victor looked confused. That's it? Steven nodded. Mastering yourself is harder than mastering any technique. Maya smiled gently. You've already taken the hardest step, accepting your mistake. Victor exhaled deeply, as if something heavy finally lifted off his chest. The gym reacts. People clapped quietly. Not like they were cheering a fight, but like they were witnessing redemption. One of the trainers approached him. Good job today, man. Another added, takes real guts to admit you were wrong. Even the people who had avoided him before gave him nods of respect. Victor wasn't used to this. Not admiration, not fear, but respect earned the right way. And it felt different, better, real. A word with Maya. Before leaving, Victor turned to Maya again. I promise, I'll never be that person again. Maya smiled. Just be better than yesterday. That's all anyone can ask. He let out a small laugh, something even he didn't expect. For the first time, I think I can. The final message. As Steven and Maya walked toward the exit, the gym felt different. Not because of fear, not because of fame, but because a lesson had been learned. A real lesson. Not through violence, not through humiliation, but through humility. At the door, Steven paused and turned to the gym. Remember something, he said, voice calm and steady. Real strength isn't what you use against others. It's what you use to protect them. And real respect is what you show before you know who someone is. People nodded. Some clapped softly again. Victor stood taller, not from pride, but from growth. Steven and Maya stepped outside, sunlight falling over them. Another day ahead. Another lesson given. Another life changed. The moral. Respect isn't about who deserves it. Respect is about who you choose to be. Strength isn't loud. Strength doesn't brag. Strength doesn't intimidate. Strength is silent. Strength is controlled. Strength is used only to protect. If you believe humility is true power, type respect in the comments. And tell me, where are you watching from? I want to thank every good-hearted soul personally.